Today, we're diving into the tricky and often misunderstood world of obsessive thoughts. We'll be pulling our key ideas from the fantastic book Overcoming Obsessions by Christine Purdon and David A. Clark. So let's just jump right in.
All right, let's start with a question. And it might feel a little personal, a bit uncomfortable even, but as we're about to see, your answer actually reveals something incredibly universal about how our minds work. And this brings us to the first huge takeaway. If you answered yes to that last question, well, guess what? You are in very, very good company. Having these kinds of thoughts isn't weird. It's human. I mean, the research on this is just crystal clear. Having a bizarre, unwelcome thought flash through your mind doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It just means you have a brain. We're talking about 80 to 90% of all people. That's almost everybody. And what's really fascinating is when you look at the specifics. Get this, one study of regular university students found that more than a quarter of them had intrusive thoughts about harming someone they loved. Nearly 40% had unwanted sexual thoughts, and even more had thoughts that clashed with their religious beliefs. Now here's the kicker. These are the exact same types of thoughts that cause so much pain for people with diagnosed OCD. So this begs a massive question, right? If almost all of us have these thoughts, why do they become a debilitating problem for some people? But for others, they're just a passing blip. Well, the secret isn't in the thought itself. It's in what you do next. The book illustrates this perfectly with a great example. Imagine two people, we'll call them Nima and Ravi. They're both driving, and they both have the exact same intrusive thought. But what happens next is a story of two completely different journeys. So boom, the thought hits both of them. Nima's reaction is kind of like, that was a weird thought. She dismisses it because it just doesn't line up with who she knows she is. For her, it's just mental noise. But Ravi, he latches on tight. He treats that thought like it's a profound revelation about his true character. And immediately, all the alarm bells in his head start screaming. And that, right there, is the absolute heart of the matter. The problem is never the initial thought. It's the meaning, the importance, the terrible significance you assign to it. That's what lights the fuse for the entire cycle of suffering. Ravi's reaction is the perfect example of how a single, random thought can spiral and morph into this powerful self-feeding trap. So let's break down exactly how that trap is built. So first you have the obsession. This is that initial intruder, the unwanted thought or image or urge. It's distressing, and it feels like it's being shoved into your consciousness. This is Ravi's "what if I'm a killer" thought. Then, in response to that obsession, comes the compulsion. This is the thing you feel you absolutely have to do. It can be a physical behavior, like checking something, or a mental one, like praying or repeating a phrase. And the goal is always the same: make the anxiety stop, or prevent the terrible thing you're afraid of from happening. And here's how that trap snaps shut. It's a vicious cycle. Step 1, the intrusive thought appears. Step 2, you misinterpret it. You think, this is dangerous, this means I'm a bad person. That triggers Step 3, your anxiety goes through the roof. So, to escape that horrible feeling, you move to Step 4. You perform a compulsion or avoid something. And here is the sneaky, powerful part. Step 5, you get temporary relief. Your anxiety goes down. And your brain learns a powerful but wrong lesson. Hey, that ritual worked. It kept us safe. This makes the thought seem even more dangerous the next time. It makes you even more likely to do the compulsion again. The trap just gets stronger and stronger. Okay, so if fighting the thoughts is like throwing gasoline on the fire, how on earth do you actually get out of the trap? Well, that brings us to the path to freedom. And here is the huge, kind of counterintuitive secret. The goal is not to control, eliminate, or fight the thoughts. The goal is to fundamentally change your response to them. And this is the absolute core of cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, which is hands down the most effective psychological treatment we have for OCD. CBT basically gives you a toolkit to systematically dismantle the trap. First, you challenge that faulty interpretation. You learn to see the thought as just meaningless brain noise. Then comes the most powerful component, exposure and response prevention, or ERP. This means you deliberately face the thought or trigger. That's the exposure. And you actively resist doing the compulsion. That's the response prevention. And by doing this, you learn two life-changing lessons. One, that the anxiety, as terrible as it feels, will eventually fade all by itself. And two, the catastrophic thing you were terrified would happen just doesn't. You break that false link between the thought and the danger.
OCD expert Dr. Paul Salkauskas frames the choice perfectly. He basically says, look, if you did nothing, we can pretty much guarantee that in 6 months, things will be exactly the same. But if you follow the treatment, yes, you're taking what feels like a risk. But we can also pretty much guarantee your obsessions and your life will be so much better than they are now. It's a calculated risk for a massive reward.
And all of this work leads to the ultimate goal, which is a really profound shift in how you relate to your own mind.
And let's be absolutely clear on this. Winning this battle doesn't mean you'll have a perfectly quiet, thought-free mind. That's an impossible fantasy. Winning means you get to a place where those thoughts can show up and you just don't care. You've taken away their power.
Through this whole process, you learn to see your thoughts for what they actually are, not urgent commands, not deep truths about your soul, but just fleeting bits of random mental static. You learn to just watch them drift by, like clouds in the sky, without getting swept up in them.
So in the end, the way out of the trap isn't about building bigger walls to keep thoughts out. It's about tearing those walls down and just letting the wind blow through. And it leaves us with a final question to really think about. What if true freedom isn't a silent mind, but a mind that you're no longer at war with?